Hi, this is Professor Favors with American Literature. So today's lesson is on Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, and we are only going to look at stanzas 1 to 20. So make sure to have your document out. You can access it online. The Song of Myself, if you type it in as a research target, you should find a PDF. For my class, however, you do have access to a link. So this is American Literature, Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, stanzas 1 to 20. So this lesson is subject to fair use because I am including the 20 stanzas within this presentation, but it is for teaching purposes. So um, there are also pics, two pics of Walt Whitman as well. So this is subject to fair use. All right, so let's look at Walt Whitman. His date ranges 1819 to 1892. And so here's a picture of him. And I'm just going to read this slide and the next slide. The second of 9 children and born in 1819 to a Long Island farmer and carpenter, Walt Whitman is both the journeyman poet of Americanness and its champion. A journalist and newspaper editor throughout his life, Whitman worked as a law clerk, a school teacher, a printer, a civil servant, and a hospital aide, but he was always writing. From his teenage years until his death, his byline was on constant view. Contemporary reports suggest that Whitman was an industrious worker, but that he was often accused of idleness because his habit of long midday walks contrasted sharply with 19th century attitudes toward work. In Song of Myself, Whitman addressed these critics directly by writing, I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. So the purpose of us only looking at 1 through 20, even though 21 through 52 might have the answer that we need. The only reason why we want to look at only 1 through 20 for Song of Myself is this idea here where Whitman is addressing his critics. He is being accused of idleness. He's being accused of idleness. Song of Myself is him addressing the critics. They're saying in a time of change, in a time of industry, in a time of work is important to us. 19th century attitudes towards work. He is being idle. So then the 52 stanza Song of Myself is his response to the critics. And that's why we're only going to look at 1 through 20 because 1 through 20 really gives us what we need. Okay. So when you are reading the 20 stanzas, Song of Myself, understand that everything that he is saying, line by line, stanza by stanza, is in a response to the critics who say he's idle within the context of 19th century attitudes toward work. All right, so for Whitman, too much industry dulled the ability to celebrate the ordinary. In the preface to the first edition of Leaves of Grass in 1855, Whitman expounds on his love for the common. Other states indicate themselves in their deputies, but the genius of the United States is not best or most in its executives or legislators, nor in its ambassadors or authors or colleges or churches or parlors, nor even in its newspapers or inventors, but always most in the common people. Whitman's love for the common people that he encountered and observed in the urban centers of the North is expressed in all his poetry. If his British contemporary Alfred Lord Tennyson is the national poet of mourning, then Whitman is the national poet of celebration. So, what you see here with Whitman, too much industry, too much industry dulled the ability to celebrate the ordinary. Every day there is a ordinary experience. And what he's suggesting here that all of these people who are about industry, and call it genius, right? So these are the folks who are business executives. These are the folks who are state, federal legislators. These are some of the people who are ambassadors, authors, colleges, churches, parlors, even newspapers or inventors. These are the people who are so busy with industry, and there's nothing wrong with industry in a sense that you still need to put your hands to work. But he was saying that people spent too much time in industry to the point that they missed the commonness of people, everyday ordinary living. And so again, Song of Myself is a response to the critics that you are spending too much time in industry. You're not celebrating the ordinary. You're calling yourself genius because of all these different categories, right? It's like a person listing all of their accomplishments on their resume. You do this, you do this, you do this, but there's some aspect of your life that you are missing out on. And that's what he wants to call attention to. All right, so let's look at some historical implications. Remember from the introductory PowerPoint lesson to the course um, on time periods, that every time you see something in terms of a time period 1819 to 1892, his his birth and death dates, and that's the 19th century. You want to look at what was going on during that time. Now, there's a lot more that's going on. I just only put here the most necessary, but let's look at it. So, 1819, we have the Panic of 1819, which is a financial crisis. Somewhere between here, we also had another financial crisis, somewhere like 1837. Thomas Jefferson founds the University of Virginia. So then we have different states becoming states, or different territories becoming states. So Maine and Missouri becoming a state. Florida becomes a U.S. territory. We also have Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, the presidents, dying on the same day, and then Andrew Jackson becoming president. We have Nat Turner's revolt, also slavery debates. We have Oberlin College beginning enrolling female students. This is a change in the dynamic of all men being able to go to college, right? And many of the institutions having to create uh, separate institutions for women, separate institutions for Black Americans. And so you're going to see this again in your final paper for this course on single sex colleges. And the title of that is Are Single Sex Colleges Obsolete? And so then 1845, we have Florida and Texas becoming states. Then we have the Mexican American War. What is interesting here is 1857 is kind of like a current issue that's going on today. But this was Dred Scott v. Sanford, and he sued based on the idea that he was free from slavery. And so slaves and blacks, um, the conclusion of the suit, the judge's decision, slaves and blacks descended from slaves were not American citizens and cannot sue. So then later we ended up having Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves, Reconstruction era, assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. Then the 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship and equal protection under the law, meaning that we're not necessarily equal. It's a citizenship amendment, but it basically means that it's equal application of the law. So if men can go to college, women can go to college. If white people can go to college, black people can go to college. So it's equal application of the law. So now this is the industry aspect of um, Whitman's critique. 1865 to 1913, these were two major industrial revolutions. Then there was a global transition towards manufacturing, technological improvements, rapid economic growth in these areas here. So during the 19th century, where there's a heavy attitude towards work and industry, within this context here of the 19th century, we have critics who are criticizing Walt Whitman that he's not industrious enough. And so keep this in mind as we go through all the different slides. So we're looking at the immediate text. Whenever you want to look at a literary work, you look at the immediate text. You don't go and find um, secondary source material to try to understand the text itself. You want to take some time to learn how to look at the text yourself, and that's what we're going to do. All right, stanza 15 is the list. It's a lot of listing. Stanza 15 is multiple slides. So I will likely separate this from the major presentation. Okay, so when you take this kind of slow, here is the list. All right, the pure contralto sings in the organ loft. The carpenter dresses his plank, the tongue of his foreplane whistles its wild ascending lisp. The married and unmarried children ride home to their Thanksgiving dinner. The pilot seizes the kingpin. He heaves down with a strong arm. The mate stands braced in the whaleboat, lance and harpoon are ready. The duck shooter walks by silent and cautious stretches. The deacons are ordained with crossed hands at the altar. The spinning girl retreats and advances to the hum of the big wheel. The farmer stops by the bars as he walks on a first day loaf and looks at the oats and rye. The lunatic is carried at last to the asylum, a confirmed case. He will never sleep any more as he did in the cot in his mother's bedroom. The jor printer with gray head and gaunt jaws works at his case. He turns his quid of tobacco while his eyes blur with the manuscript. The malformed limbs are tied to the surgeon's table. What is removed drops horribly in a pail. The cardroom girl is sold at the auction stand. The drunkard nods by the bar room stove. So when you're thinking about this list, this is list of particular characters, subjects of history, and list of activities as well. So we have the pure contralto sings. We have the carpenter dressing his plank. We have the married and unmarried children coming home. The pilot seizing the kingspin. The mate standing braced. The duck shooter walks by. The deacons referring to church or religion are ordained. The spinning girl retreats. The farmer stops by the bars. And then also loaf and looks at the row oats. So loaf is connected to the farmer, which is also connected to Whitman. And loaf, remember, is to wander aimlessly. The lunatic is carried away at the asylum. The jewel printer with gray head and gaunt jaws works at his case, so he's a man. He's an old man. He turns his quid of tobacco. The malformed limbs, we don't even know if this is we know it's a person or it could be an animal. So we don't even know what malformed limbs refers to. And what is removed drops horribly in a pail. Then the cardroom girl is sold at the auction stand. The quadroon girl actually refers to a person who is 1/4 black by descent. So remember, we had a runaway slave, then we had Negro, and then we had a now we have a quadroon girl. Remember, a person who is 1/4 black by descent. So the runaway slave is assumed to be full black. The Negro is assumed to be full black. The quadroon girl is assumed to be half black. Okay, so this is sort of like a listing. There's a lot going on. The one thing you want to look at Lunatic is carried. The lunatic is carried at the asylum. He was never the jar. Okay, that's like one person. Which just the journey he turns his. Okay, no. All right. So just keep that in mind. That's the first part of the list. All right. So the machinist rolls up his sleeves. The policeman travels his beat. The gatekeeper marks who passed. So we're just going to do it as we go. The machinist, the policeman, the gatekeeper marks who passed. The young fellow drives the express wagon. I love him, though I do not know him. The half breed straps on his light boots to compete in the race. So we have a reference to race here, which could be literal or figurative, right? The Western turkey shooting draws old and young, right? So now we're talking about events. Out from the crowd steps the marksman. He takes his position, levels his piece. The groups of newly come immigrants cover the wharf or levee. As the woolly pates hoe in the sugar field, the overseer views them from his saddle. The bugle calls in the ballroom. The gentlemen run for their partners. The dancers bow to each other. The youth lies awake in the cedar roofed garret and harks to the musical rain. The wolverine sets traps on the creek that helps fill the Huron. The squaw, referring to Native American, wrapped in her yellow hem cloth, is offering moccasins and bead bags for sale. So we're probably talking. We're probably at a market. The connoisseur peers along the exhibition gallery with half-shut eyes bent sideways. As the deckhands make fast the steamboat, the plank is thrown for the shore-going passengers. The young sister holds out the skein, while the elder sister wins it off in a ball and stops now and then for the knots. The 1 year wife is recovering and happy having a week ago born her first child. Okay. The clean hairy Yankee girl works at her sewing machine or in the factory or mill. The paving man leans on his two-handed rammer. The reporter's lead flies swiftly over the notebook. The sign painter is lettering with blue and gold. The canal boy trots on the towpath. The bookkeeper counts at his desk. The shoemaker waxes his thread. The conductor beats his time for the band, and all the performers follow him. The child is baptized. The convert is making his first professions. So, again, we're still listing. And what I believe the listing is more about what is progressing. The 19th century is about um, um, not revolution, but the first and second industrial revolutions. And so as life for the poet Whitman is about loitering and rambling and loafing about aimlessly, wandering, he is still met with activity around him. He is still met with people having to live life. They don't have time to loaf about. The machinist has to roll up his sleeves. The policeman has to do his job. He has to travel his beat. The gatekeeper marks who pass. He can't. The gatekeeper just can't let anybody in. They have to know that the person qualifies to pass. The young fellow has to drive his express wagon. The half breed. So now we have half breed in terms of race. The half breed that moves from former slave to Negro to quadroon to half breed. And don't forget the red girl. The half breed straps on his light boots to compete in a race. So we are at a race, but we can also sail. The Western turkey shooting draw, old and young, right? Out from the marksman, the newly come immigrants. So we have an open America going back to when the the poet was saying that the doors of the barns are open or something. What is it? The big doors of the country barns stand open and ready, which is stanza 9. So we have immigrants. Then we have an overseer. The overseer is a holdover from the plantation mentality. Gentlemen run for their partners, dancers, youth lie, Wolverine, Native American squaw. She can sell, so that means she has some kind of licensing, right? Some permit to sell at this big market and race. Connoisseur, that means that's a level different from everyone else in terms of expertise. Deckhands, young sister, clean haired Yankee girl. Usually, Yankee refers to the North, so we are either in the North in stanza 15, or we are in the South, referring to people of the North. The paving man, the canal boy, the conductor, and then now the child is baptized. The convert is making his first professions. So, um, yeah, okay. All right, here's another stanza 15. Another aspect of stanza 15. The regatta The regatta is spread on the bay. The race has begun. How the white sails sparkle. The drover, watching his drove, sings out to them that would stray. The peddler sweats with his pack on his back, the purchaser higgling about the odd cent. The bride unrumples her white dress. The minute hand of the clock moves slowly. The opium eater reclines with rigid head and just opened lips. The prostitute draggles her shawl, her bonnet bobs on her tipsy and pimpled neck. The crowd laugh at her blackguard oaths. The men jeer and wink to each other. Miserable, I do not laugh at your oaths, nor jeer you. The president holding a cabinet council is surrounded by the great secretaries. On the piazza walk three matrons, stately and friendly with twinned arms. The crew of the fishmack pack repeated layers of halibut on the hold. The Missourian crosses the plains, toting his wares and his cattle. As the fare collector goes to the train, he gives notice by the jingling of loose change. The floor men are laying the floor, the tenors are tinning the roof, the masons are calling for mortar, in single file, each shouldering his hard pass onward the labors. So, what this is actually, if you focus on this last sentence, it's the laborers. Laborers. The list is about laboring, right? Versus Whitman's choice to be idle. So the drover, the peddler, the purchaser, the bride, the opium eater. Now we have the prostitute, classifications of citizens, the crowd, the men jeer, the president holding the cabinet council for his great secretaries, the piazza walk, three matrons, the crew, the Missourian, which I'm assuming is a boat, the fare collector, he gives notice, the floor men, in single file each show, the tenors, the masons. These are all laborers, and this is in contrast to Whitman. Whitman just aimlessly or idly going about his day, his life, his season. Okay, so that's stanza 15, and this is the last. This is the last of stanza 16. I mean 15. Okay, seasons pursuing each other. The indescribable crowd is gathered. It is the fourth of seventh month. What salutes of cannon and small arms. Seasons pursuing each other. The plower plows, the mower mows, and the winter grain falls in the ground. Off on the lakes, the pike fisher watches and waits by the hole in the frozen surface. The stumps stand thick round the clearing. The squatter strikes deep with his axe. Flat boatmen make fast towards dusk near the cottonwood or pecan trees. Coon seekers go through the regions of the Red River or through the those drained by the Tennessee, or through those of the Arkansas. Torches shine in the dark that hangs on the Chattahoochee or Altamaha. Patriarchs sit at supper with sons and grandsons and great grandsons around them. In walls of adobe and canvas tents, rest hunters and trappers after their day's sport. The city sleeps and the country sleeps. The living sleep for their time. The dead sleep for their time. The old husband sleeps by his wife, and the young husband sleeps by his wife. And these tend inward to me, and I tend outward to them. And such as it is to be of these, more or less I am. And of these, one and all, I weave the song of myself. So, in the midst of all this everyday living, seasons pursuing each other here, where the plower plows, the mower mows, the winter grains falls to the ground, meaning that seed time and harvest time has to go on. You can't go about um, um, idly wandering about because each season requires its own labor and effort. And then the stumps and thick, the flat boatmen, coon sinkers. This coon sinkers through the regions of the Red River, drained by the Tennessee, or through some of the Arkansas. This is the South, of course. And coon sinkers always refers to masters, the slave master to slave mentality. And so at this time, if they're searching for former slaves, it's likely because uh, they are closer to emancipation, or Emancipation Proclamation is already passed, and so then you still have people who don't know that they have been freed. It passed 1863, but sometimes some people didn't learn about it until 1865. But people who want to continue the system, the slave system, master slave system, they're out trying to trap, right? Because then you'll see the word trapper after their day's sport here. So torches shine in the dark. That's usually a slave master trying to find the slave. Patriarchs sit at the supper with sons and grandsons and great grandsons. So now we're talking about generation. Remember from the beginning, Whitman was talking about his generation, his stanza one, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. So this is this is generational language from the beginning to this stanza 15. And then we have rest hunters and trappers, city sleeps, country sleeps, living sleep for their time, dead sleep for their time. Again, that goes back to seasons, right? That goes back to seasons. The old husband sleeps by his wife, the young husband sleeps by his wife. So standards remain, right, regardless. And these are inward, outward, and all these, and of these, one, and all, I weave the song of myself. So myself is still separate from all of everything that's going on in stanza 15. All right, so here's some resources, research archives, and educational information. So Walt Whitman Birthplace Association website, then research archives list of links you can find on that website. Some are good links and some are not. So I added a Walt Whitman archive link here, and then of course the source pig. All right. Thank you very much for listening.